Whether you're new to pool and practicing the basics, or a more experienced player performing drills to improve your shot making and positional play, the Drill Partner is perfect for you.
Long time no see, Mike. How you doing, my man?
It has been a minute. I'm doing good. It's good to be back into big tournament mode. And
Yeah, we got to
talk
get
about
back in stroke, buddy.
that's right.
It's major season, you know.
That's right. Yeah, we're back in action, which is good.
It's been good, man. It's been good. I've been hanging out here at the house the last few days. I've been sweating some snooker, Mike. I've been really enjoying watching the Crucible. It's been epic, man. Over the
Yeah, did
last
you
like
see the eight
6 days.
to nothing wipeout today, huh?
Yeah, dude, that kid. I'd never seen that kid play until this tournament, and I think he came in like in qualifiers. But man, Ronnie was lucky to get to four yesterday because if he doesn't get hooked on a red, the kid probably is going to be up 3-0, and I think it was going to be his break in that next one. So it was just it. When I woke up this morning though, and I saw the 12-4, I had to like wipe my eyes, and I was like, wait a minute, what happened? What did I miss? And but it's no surprise because that kid was his long pot was just unbelievable, Mike. I mean, the guy
Yeah.
was just absolutely running through it. But we got pool stuff coming up. We got the reigning defending UK Open champion about to join us via Scotland, which I'm pumped for, Mike.
Yeah.
And we're gonna do a little preview of the UK Open as well. Talk some betting stuff, favorites, guys who we're looking at. Let us know in the chat if you guys can hear us and see us. All right. Matt Poland says you're here to talk about Bergman and Little John. We're going to talk about Justin Bergman here in a little bit too. I did tell Mike about that. I got to sweat all that match, so that was great. But let's bring on in Robbie Capito via Scotland. Let me see if I can bring him on in here. It's been a little bit. Robbie, can you hear us all right?
Yes, I do. Loud and clear.
Well, welcome back to the show, my man. How you doing?
I'm good. Just finished my first two matches. I'm playing tomorrow for the winners qualification rounds.
You got a tough matchup against the birthday boy, if I saw right on the
Birthday
on
boy.
the bracket. Yeah, Aloysius.
Yeah. Yeah, we're food buddies, so pretty good friends with them. We train a lot together, and it's gonna be an awkward match playing each other, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it happens. It happens at these events with a lot of the players. You end up running into your roommate or country mate or some countryman or something like that. So it gets to be a little bit odd sometimes, right?
Yeah. How do you find to be able to like really dig deep when you're playing a guy like that you really like and respect and but you gotta take him out. You gotta beat him and how do you mentally just get geared up like you would deep in a tournament?
He's just treating him as another opponent. He beats oxygen just like everyone. So he's just another person, another opponent. And just gotta play my game.
Well, you played your game here in the UK last year pretty well. Coming into the UK Open as defending champion. How does that feel? I mean, what all of a sudden is there like higher expectations on yourself, or does it make you more nervous, or is it just fun to get the recognition?
It's a tough approach to being a defending champion in the UK Open, but it's even a bigger challenge for me, which I enjoy. So I would love to see myself overcome this challenge and hopefully stay on top of it.
When did it feel like you had a chance to really snap it off, Robbie? Because that was your first time going that deep in a major, and the one thing that I can recall about that tournament that looked different, just watching you play outside of like the obvious of like breaking and running real well and making great decisions and all that, but I remember just your mental game seemed to be really on point. I remember seeing you sitting in your chair and you were just breathing real well. You were really staying like present. It looked like, but what changed where you were able to kind of think like, man, I got this. I think I can do this.
It's not about what change I made. It's who I played, I think, because during the last 16 and the quarterfinals, I beat arguably the best players at that time, even now.
Yeah.
which was Federer and Filler. Yeah. So after those two matches, I had a huge confidence boost, and yeah, I just took it ball by ball, shot by shot, and the rest was
I
history.
think prior to you were doing a lot of sparring out there in the Philippines, if I remember right.
Yeah, it's my first training session in Marboys. That was the time, and had lots of sparring matches with amazing players at Marboys. Philippines, those great players and tough environments. So that was
Yeah,
a good
they
prep for me.
they've had the who's who of monsters come through there, including my man to my left over here. He's even broken ran out there on a RAS on a time or two out there in Manila. Tell him, Mike. Tell him that story. It's legendary. They're gonna put his picture up on the wall out there when you're walking in here pretty soon out there.
Yeah. Mike Pinozo ran a rack at Marboys.
Yeah,
You should sign that table if you remember that table.
there you go.
So, when you walk into the arena for UK Open, you think it's going to will all the memories come back to you right away of what it felt like a year ago?
Yeah, it's love to have those memories, but it's up to me to forget about those memories because as you said, you gotta stay mentally prepared and well, be present, and not dwell on the past or the future. So yeah, it's a nice feeling to bring to the UK Open. It's also a mental challenge for me.
And you're coming off. You've played well so far at the Scottish Open. You've won your first two matches in a really tough field, and you're coming off a good performance at the PLP. What's starting to click for you?
I've always been confident about my game. It's just on how I control my mental side. Just working hard, trying to acknowledge what's going on in my mind, and that's basically it.
What can you repeat that for me, Robbie? You kind of broke up a little bit for me.
Sorry. It's just trying to acknowledge what's going on inside my head, and just to be aware of what's going on, and just to learn how to react to it.
What's been the expectation of the goal for you heading into this season, Robbie?
Goals are, of course, trying to win another major tournament for myself, and hopefully stay in the top 10. Hopefully be in the top 10.
Yeah.
Okay.
Typically when you win a major, or at least how it's been historically over the last few years, you win a major, you get a pretty good shot at getting into the Moscone Cup. We've seen that time and time again. That's like the automatic way to kind of get in there, or at least to where you can't be denied. Coming off the UK Open last year, I'm thinking this kid's got a pretty good shot at making the Reyes Cup team. How are you feeling heading into the remainder of the season following that victory in terms of trying to make that team, and then how did you feel whenever you weren't able to get on there?
Yeah, of course, the Reyes Cup is going to be a goal for this year. So many amazing Asian players coming up. Right? The Cole brothers are still up there. Filipinos. AJ Mana's coming up.
Yeah,
it's going to be a tough field for Asia, right? So, and I was a bit disappointed not being able to make it last year as a major champion, but it is what it is. It's their first Reyes Cup, so I understand the decisions that has been done. So the only thing I could do is just to win more and be in the rank.
Does that add more fuel to your fire?
Yeah, for sure. And
I like that.
being at that stage, I've seen videos of it. Just gives me I want to be there.
Yeah. It must. I think having a goal like that beyond just winning each tournament you're playing, having a bigger picture goal, must help you keep your focus more during each of the events going forward, because each one of them is a piece going towards that goal.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, you see that like
Can
in
you say
every
that again?
sport. Go ahead, Mike.
I'm sorry?
No, you were saying, can you repeat yourself, Mike?
Yeah. So having that as a goal, does that help you focus more on each event as a step along the way to that goal? Whereas without that goal at the end, every event is kind of its own start and finish.
Yeah. Yeah. So you gotta stay up to par. You gotta keep yourself mentally stable. Keep your body conditions well. Then you could stay consistent on the for the results, and you give yourself a bigger chance to get on that team.
Yeah.
How old are you, Robbie?
30,
23.
23.
Well,
30.
I mean, I can understand being a little disappointed not making that team last year, but I'll tell you what, to be 23 and you were really the first guy out on that team, so to be in that consideration is still a hell of an accomplishment. Like you said, the Asian team is about as deep as it gets. I mean, you can probably make, a 5-man team out of each country. So to be there at that age is pretty remarkable, man.
Thank you, thank you. Well, I don't look at my age, but I just love to work.
Well, and when it comes to a ranking, you probably got the best hair on tour, I'd say. So as long as you keep the hair game strong, you know what I mean, then that's all that really matters in life. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Very good.
Yeah, I gotta use it while gotta keep using it while I can. I don't want
There you
to.
go.
Is there anything
Hopefully, 20 years later, I still have this.
is there anything in your game you've been working on this year differently? Anything you're spending more time focusing on?
Mostly the shot selection and the mental side.
Okay. In shot selection,
Yeah.
you're using a different process. Are you, how are you approaching that differently?
Being more mature and knowing your percentages,
Okay.
because when you're younger, you gotta go for everything. You have no fear at all. But then when you look at the top players, when they see a shot, they might not even go for it. They just go for the safety, go for the defense, and just let the game come to them instead of like making it happen,
Right.
trying to force something. Yeah.
That's a great point. That's such an undervalued aspect when it comes to the game, because you'll see, like, especially with top Europeans, I feel like more than anything, you'll see them make the quote unquote right shot more often than not. I've seen guys like Albin, who's been a monster and a multiple time world champion, where it doesn't matter what the score line is, more often than not, he's gonna play it the exact same way, and that helps him either continue with his lead or come back in a match.
Mhm. Yeah, that's why he's multiple world champion. So I'm trying to learn off that as well. Hopefully, it will help my game and hopefully make me win more titles.
Who have been some players that have kind of helped you along the way, Robbie, and kind of helped guide you as far as proper ways to train and to approach a tournament, and how to just travel well, amongst other things?
For sure, it would be Carlo, number one, and then second would be Maguire. Those two have helped me a lot. Well, when I was 19, 20 years old, I went to the US. I quit the Hong Kong national team, and I met Carlo and Alex Pagulayan, and then they just guided me, took me to tournaments, reflected on what I could improve, and learned how they practice, how they train, what their mindsets were, and those few years are big. So I'm really thankful for them helping me a lot.
Yeah, interesting. Interesting. You are one of the top young players. You're talking about experience and knowing how to not going for everything like you did when you were young. You're only 23, so I don't know how much younger you could have been, but there are so many great young players right now, and you're starting to see them more often. Who are the ones that jump out at you?
It's just so many, like AJ.
Yeah, you mentioned AJ, yeah.
And and right now who's doing well is also this Felix
Vogel. Yeah.
Felix Vogel, yeah.
Yeah, Felix. Yeah. Actually, like the winner of the PLP, Moritz, who's also very young.
Yeah.
A couple years younger than me. There's so many young players right now. And Claudio.
Yeah. Jonas too is played really well.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more when it comes to that. Those were some guys that jumped out at me, especially out there in Hanoi. Claudio and AJ were two guys where you just kind of felt like they're on the verge. They're coming.
Mm-hmm.
So from
how they play, like Claudio plays very naturally, and AJ goes for everything and he makes everything.
Yeah. It would be to be young and fearless.
Yeah.
All right, so you got a lot of stuff coming up, like you mentioned. You're finishing off the Scottish Open over the next couple of days, and then heading out there to the UK. What's been the media experience like? Kind of, with being the defending champion and having all these cameras in your face and everyone wanting a piece of you ahead of the event.
It's overwhelming. I still can't believe that I managed to get the title until now. But it's been a quick year. It's been already like a year. Last year that I snapped off the title so quick. And yes, it's great to have that feeling. And I'm glad to be back on the TV table. I haven't been on the TV table since my win. I don't know why. I'm not pointing fingers, but I'm glad to be back.
I'm sure fans will be glad to see you on the TV table again.
What's your schedule like outside of these events, Robbie? Are you planning on playing all the majors and full-time traveling this year?
Yeah, depending on my rankings. If my ranking is up there, I'll have to choose what I'm gonna play. But as for now, I'm going for everything now.
Good deal, Mike.
Yeah, it's gonna be a tough schedule. It's gonna be a tough schedule, especially flying out from Asia. Jet lag is gonna be tough.
Yeah, it's
and expenses wise, it's gonna be tough as well.
Yeah, it's tough. It's difficult. That's a lot of travel for you guys all over the world for these events. So, but looks like there's more and more. There's more and more regional WNT events in Asia this year than there were last year.
Yeah, that's a huge change for the tour right now. Lots of opportunities given to the Asian players where they don't have to spend that much money to fly out to US or Europe. It's the expenses wise very double at least. Like having a meal is like $20 US compared to like $3 in Asia. So it's a huge change. And I'm glad that's happening, and it's going to be.
Yeah, it's great opportunities for the players in Asia to have more events close to them. So we're excited about that for you.
Yeah. I want to.
Yeah. And there are more and more players coming out.
Yeah.
Right from Asia that you guys have never heard.
That's the other thing about the more regional events out there is you're going to see more of these younger kids have opportunities for them, and the more opportunities they get, the bigger chance they are to start traveling to some of these international events as well, because they'll start to get experience, they'll start to get some money from winning some of these events, start to get some sponsorships. So it's a great building block there to get those tournaments in Asia.
Yeah, that's great work from Matt from there, and hopefully it's going to be like more on Asia as well. I'm looking forward to it.
Great.
I want to get you out of here on this, Robbie. What did your mom say after you won the UK Open, my man?
Oh, my baby.
Yeah, is that right?
Yes.
That's great. That's great.
Well, hey, listen, we appreciate you making time for us. Good luck out there in Scotland and especially in the UK. Good luck defending your crown, man. And hopefully we'll get to catch up with you here pretty soon in the next couple of events.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Take care, Robbie. Good luck.
Thank you, sir. All right, Mike. It's pretty good. Pretty good from the kid.
Yeah, no, he's,
What do you think his ceiling is this year, Mike?
Well, it's hard to tell. I mean, he's got the talent, and he showed last year at the UK Open he had the mental capacity to handle that type of situation, like he mentioned, going through Federer and Filler, and then closing it out, in semifinal and final matches. I don't care who you're playing in those matches. When it gets to that point in the tournament, you gotta dial yourself in. So he did really well. But then after that, and I was tempted to ask him about what it was like through the rest of the year, because you put higher expectations on yourself at that point, knowing that you can do it, and how frustrating it is. How frustrating is it to not get there, thereafter? I mean, I think if you went through the big majors for Matchroom last year, the UK Open, Hanoi, US Open, World Championship, he was mostly 33rd, 17th. He never got into that top 12, top 16 slot. And so that had to be frustrating. And it has to show you how difficult it is and how everything has to come together so perfectly for you to go through an entire event, right? You could be playing great and just one hiccup at 33 and you're home, right? So, I was curious as to what he learned last year about the process and about trying to stay even keeled for the next tournament and things like that, because, that's the reason that he didn't make Reyes, to me, is that after the title, his response is, he just didn't get the points. He wasn't high enough to really earn the spot. So I wondered if, mentally, if he's looking at this year a little bit differently.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you have signature wins like you get coming off of a Federer and a Filler, and then it's so easy to have a letdown, and to be able to close, there's a ton of value there, how it'll serve you like going forward, But look, while I can understand the letdown when it comes to not making that team, I mean, you kind of would figure if he wasn't going to get in on points, it'd be difficult, just given how, like, I could understand the moves that Matchroom made, and we talked about that going into the Reyes Cup last year as far as who we expected to make that team and things like that from a market standpoint. But like, taking the positives out of it is everything, and so and that kid, he seems so mentally stable, where you never really see him get too high or too low. You mentioned the match tomorrow with Aloysius and how that's his good friend, but like, he's still with the same hand, is like, I'm ready, and he's still, you can tell that he's still hungry. And, I can't wait to see more of the kid. That mental game and making smarter decisions and things like that is really going to serve him, especially towards the tail end of tournaments, because, you're going to have guys that are going to be, that are just monsters and killers, and, they know how to finish you, Mike, and so you got to find a balance.
And, we talked about all the great young players now too. So it just, it's, you look at it and you're like, man, it's got to be so hard for these guys to grind through an entire field like that, to the final match, to win the tournament. I mean, you're looking at all the usual suspects, and now you're adding all these other players to it, from Pius to Jonas to AJ to, Moritz, to, all these young guys who are, they're world-class talent. I mean, these guys are not too far away from being right there. I mean, you look at, if you were looking at Moscone Cup right now for Team Europe, look at the guys who are in the hunt: Niels, Pius, Moritz, Jonas.
Let's talk about some of those guys, Mike. Who do we realistically think has a good chance out of those listed players of making that team this year?
We talked about it before. One of them's going to have to win one.
A guy like Jonas has been on a heater heading into
He's been on a heater.
the UK Open.
I think from the majors, the guy that I think's got the best shot, who's done well in majors and who has that type of capacity, is Moritz. I think he's probably the most likely of that group to be able to go through an entire field in one of the major tournaments. Jonas has done great, and he is a great player, and he's done well in some of the majors, but I don't think he's as steady in those big events as Moritz has been.
I think it's a good point, Mike. Heading into, I don't think it was last year's U.S. Open, but the year prior, or maybe it was this past year. I don't remember. He got sick, if I remember right. He had like a flu.
Yeah.
But
he was bundled up at the table. Remember? He was
on TV table with that.
And he's got parka on and whatever.
But it was like you kind of felt like that was going to be his opportunity, and it's so hard to come by just given the depth of the tour these days. No matter what region you're staying in or how you want to plan your bankroll out, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter anymore because, whether you have the seasoned vets like a Niels who ain't done yet, or you got the young kid in a Felix Vogel, like Robbie mentioned, who's now coming. It's like you're constantly teetering on whether you're being the hunter or the hunted, and then, never mind the fact that you got legends who are monsters like an SVB. And then you got, these, I guess, old men Europeans and Federer and Filler, right? And they're young in their early 20s, what I mean?
It's like they're like these, grizzled veterans.
Yeah. But it's crazy because their resume and their mantle is just packed full of majors, Mike.
They're the exception. They're the exception to the rule. They're generational talents, right? But when you look at that next level of world-class players who are 19 to 24, it's a pretty crowded field in there, and it's they've all got the talent to do it, and they just have each year they start chipping away at the bigger fish and the bigger fish and the bigger fish, and that's why I say you look at someone like Moritz, and we looked at him at the U.S. Open. I think it was 2 years ago, right, when he was sick, and he looked like he had a shot, but it's not like the window was closing on his opportunities. He was just rolling. So, and now he's got all that experience behind him, and I just think that if I were to pick a European that's got a chance to break through this year on that team, Moritz would be my guy.
Well, this is what I think, Mike, and obviously a guy like Moritz is very young, so you got to imagine he's going to have a lot more opportunity. But then we've seen guys that we've talked about for years where like they're just on the outside looking in, and you just insert said cliche, right? It's their time, they're coming, and I can think of some monster Europeans who, oh, by the way, they ain't done yet, in a Mario He and a Dennis Grabe. Victor comes to mind over the last couple of years, right? Who like we're really high on, but then it's like those chances to be in the position to make the move at that point in the calendar is so difficult because there are so many great players like a Jason or like a Filler and a Federer who are going to be automatics on a team or whatever, you know what I mean? And so,
and then in the meantime, those couple of years have gone by, and now all these new young players have come up, and they're biting you on your ass.
Yeah,
and so you look at someone like a Mario or whatever, and it's just his job has gotten twice as tough to break through because he still has those masters ahead of him, and he's got all these Moritz and Robbie's and Jonas's
coming for him
heels from behind. So it just shows how deep the talent pool is in pool right now, and we're just talking about the Europeans, right? Just switch it to Asians or take the whole field together, and you start adding in all these other players, and it's just like, holy shit, how does anybody ever win more than one of these in their life?
Well, it's not. That's fair, but then you also think about the financial side, like Robbie mentioned as well. How do you figure out a way to stay in the green throughout all these events and pick and choose where you're going, when you're going?
Well, that's what we talked about as well, and that's the opportunity now for the Asian players to have all these events. I mean, I looked in the last couple of weeks; there were just tons of these events in Asia that these guys were all playing in, and so that increases the opportunities for them to pile up a little bit more money, get a little bit of, for younger players, get more experience without having to travel to the UK or US. And so as that pool of events builds over the next coming years, then it becomes, a more reasonable opportunity for some of these guys. Then they can just pick the majors to go to the majors. They don't have to go to the U.S. for a month, and they don't have to travel long ways for, regional type tournaments. So that's what building the tour is all about. And it's, Asia was the last piece of the puzzle for really getting that developed. I mean, well, not really actually.
Well, but you better be careful what you ask for if you're a European or if you're an American,
Well, if you look at these regional events that are really, drawing people, it's the U.S. and Asia right now. Asia's jumped past Europe in like a snap of a finger. There really isn't a lot going on in Europe, but the Europeans don't seem to have. It's a little easier for them to travel in either direction, right?
Yeah.
But it's not.
Yeah,
it's
fair.
not backbreaker to go one direction or the other. So they have it a little bit better that way. But Europe needs to build up a little bit more of that regional tour infrastructure. If they don't want to start getting passed up at certain levels. And while they are now. I mean, this year is a big deal for the Euro Tour.
Yeah.
Has taken a big step forward.
Huge.
So that's hopefully that'll be what serves.
Then you got to think about, well, then how's that calendar going to shape out, Mike? Because while that is a good breeding ground for creating these monsters, and we've seen it, look at the guys who are at the top of the mountain in a Federer and a Filler,
Right.
and then all the guys that you just mentioned in a Moritz and a Felix Vogel, Mika van Berkel comes to mind, amongst others. Claudio, who I don't even remember him playing any Euro tours and I would sure put him.
He was a snooker player back then.
Yeah, but then now I would for sure put him I would put him on that same type of conversation as like an AJ. And AJ is kind of like an enigma to me because like while he's a great player, I'm a little concerned as far as like what's that social media Kool-Aid going to do to you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Without having
different animal. I mean, Claudio's obviously technically a more sound, mature player than most of the young players.
I'm real high on that kid, man.
He's got that Kachi mindset and temperament as well. And so coming from that snooker background and having that temperament and having his brother to spar with and learn from or whatever,
huge.
That's got to, improve his chances exponentially of just like breaking through in a rush.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I mean, we talk about the event that hasn't happened over the last couple of years in the World Cup of Pool. Albania would be, I guess you would call them a bit of a dark horse, I guess, because they haven't won anything. But
the Kachi's
betting on the Kachi brothers. I'll take a piece of that.
Kachi's against the Coes would be a good gambling match there.
It'd be huge, Mike. And I know that pedigree when it comes to the Cole brothers and their resume, Mike, right? And I know the experience and being so sharp out there. But let me tell you something. That kid is not far behind. No. He's not far behind Big Brother. He's not far behind those other guys. And it just feels like he's got what it takes to really just smash through that wall, because if you see him, he's just unassuming. He goes out there and handles his business. I remember that match against, of all guys, was Chua last year in Hanoi, and I know obviously like Chua went on to win the event and all these things, and I get it, you know what I mean? But man, when I saw that kid and the way that he was fighting back on a secondary TV table, it was just like, man, you can tell he's wired a little differently. And you see that with these big guys where you have to be in order to maintain and sustain and survive out there, because it is so deep on either side of you, Mike.
It is. Yeah, it's a tall order for these young guys to stick with it financially and emotionally and physically, but they all they have the talent and they have the drive. So yeah, we're gonna see a lot of these names a lot in the next couple of years.
You guys can check out all the action from the UK Open at WNT.tv. I think it's like $10 a month, Mike, if I'm not mistaken. Have you paid for your subscription, or do
I
you
do.
do you pull the ring? Do you
I just
pull the
do.
ring?
No, no, I'm ringless.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just do the annual and just get it out of the way and fight the
What is it,
bullet.
like $100?
Yeah, $100 for the year, which is great.
Yeah, $100. You can't beat it. And I like the fact that they've been ever evolving, whether it comes to a calendar that seems to add more and more events, or more TV tables to be able to sweat and
Yeah,
watch as well. You know what I mean? Like you get more value as the year progresses, you feel like, compared to whenever you originally signed up, which is awesome.
yeah,
And so and there's a lot of stuff going on, Mike, like you mentioned, no matter what part of the world that you're in. I don't know if it's a great thing or tough, depending on what that travel expense budget is like,
yeah,
um, but it's a fun time in the game for sure. And this is where, like, I don't want to keep on beating a dead horse when it comes to this WPA and matchroom side of it, but it just further shows the value in repairing that relationship, because any additional support that these guys can get is going to be massive, considering the calendar, Mike.
it is. It's giving them more opportunities, clearing the path for them, making it all easier for them, and working together on building the calendar continentally, if that makes
Right.
sense. As
Yep.
far as let's build it continent to continent. So these guys, if they're not making 4 trips a year to Asia,
Right.
they're not making 4 trips across the back and forth. So it's a work in progress, but I think most of the right moves are being made. Most of they all make sense to me. Getting that, as you said, getting that PA matchroom, agreement finished up and moving forward, it would be a huge thing for everybody. So, yeah, I mean, if that all happens and people actually do start working together, this could accelerate really fast.
Well, I mean, look, getting that additional support from the players side of it is massive, in the sense, like, it's not going to be as weighted on me. You know what I mean? Now, I'm not saying I got a free roll if I'm some of these guys, but, like, it's a whole different ball game when I'm rolling the dice with my money versus the support money that I'd be going and getting, Mike. You know what I mean? Like, that level of mental pressure that's going to come with it. We've seen it with a couple of guys, especially as the last, 2 years has kind of evolved, and these guys who have stayed with the camp or moved away from the camp or whatever. And if you talk to them outside of, like, privately, they'll mention the stresses of being able to travel and compete and stay in the green, and how difficult it is, and all these things. That's real life right there, Mike. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes,
that's
and listen, it's got to affect their game. It's got to affect them mentally. It's got there's what you don't need is added stress when you're
right.
just going out there and trying to play pool.
We talked about Jonas, talked about Robbie, and talked about an American as well, Mike, and a Lucas. Which one of those three guys you feel like they feel like they're on the outside looking in? Not that they feel like they are on the outside looking in when it comes to each team, US, European, and Asian team. Which one of those guys you think this year has the highest chance of making that team, Mike?
I'm actually going to have to say Lucas.
Is that just because of the American, like the way that the American landscape is?
It's easier to make the American team than it is to make the European team or the Asian team, and we both know that. That's just a numbers game. So yeah, if I had to bet on one of those three, I mean, Jonas breaking through and knocking David in. I mean, he's got a tough enough time getting out of his own country, much less getting on Team Europe. And Asia, look at the guys who weren't on the team last year for Team Asia. Little Cole, guys like that. That's a tough team to break into as well. So yeah, out of those three, I'd probably say Lucas. If he plays in the events, and does fairly well, he could get a point spot, or at least get enough points to where he's a logical wild card pick.
It's a fraternity. You gotta.
U.S. is not afraid of putting first timers in a wild card pick.
Well, I mean, I get that. You know what I mean? But it's also, depending on what position you're in, it can be a lot of additional pressure making that decision as well. And then the flip side of it is, well, do you go in there with the same guys who just got their ass whooped over and over and over again and hoping for a different result? You know what I mean? And so what's it going to take to really shake that tree up? Now, I'm with you. I mean, listen, logically, it makes sense because the American team is so much easier to go and make. You would, if it was open season, it'd be a whole different ball game. And realistically, I feel like, there'd probably be two guys. Like, let's say it was Asian versus the world, right? You're probably picking maybe two Americans, maybe, maybe a third.
You're not going to leave Shane Fetter home. You're not going to leave either one of them home.
No. But then here's the other thing, Mike. Like when it comes to these other teams, right? Because you know that a guy like Jason, it's a pretty strong chance he's going to make that team this year, whether on a wild card pick or otherwise. You know what I mean?
If he's captain, I like his chances.
Right, but like from what I've proven out there on the table, plus the intangibles and the off the table stuff that he brings, it's a no brainer. I'm not mad at that pick right now. But who's going to be that guy? Let's say for an Asian type team, right? Like we showed the value of the market. Right?
You can't leave home.
Well, I mean, look, Huang. I don't think I can leave off Vietnam off that team. So you got to imagine that's going to take up one of those two spots.
Not talking about a player. You're talking about a country that you want.
Well, but what I mean is like
talking about players who you're like, okay, this guy's going to be on the team because he brings all these intangibles as well as playability.
Well, and move the needle, Mike. That's what I mean. And move that needle.
Chua would be the guy that I would say for Asia.
Yeah, and then you think about that. Look, you got a guy like Carlo Beato, who's a multiple-time world champion, right? How can you leave him off? The social media presence that AJ does have and what that could bring in terms of eyes to an event like that. I could make an argument for that alone. Like if he just stayed this way, I'm not saying to go and take a meteoric rise to the top or even snap off a major.
Yeah.
But like if I'm looking at it from getting eyes on that event, Mike, I don't think they're above that. And for that matter, Mike, when in terms of eyes or a bit of a spark plug or whatever, how about old Justin Bergman out there in St. Louis, Mike? I know he ain't played a WNT event in some time, but do you think there's a chance that he has a way to make that team this year?
Based on his big win over Little John? Come on.
Everybody knows, Mike. Everybody knows.
You might be trying a little bit hard. There's a couple things with Justin. I've always been a big Justin Bergman fan, but you got to get out there and get in the mix. I'm tired of he's as good as anybody who's on a team. He's played on a team before. He can still hit ball. I want to see him out there in the mix playing some of these events. At least want to see him show up at the U.S. Open. If he's not going to make that kind of commitment, then I'm not really interested in the conversation, to be honest with you.
Look, I think after the way the last 8 months have gone, Mike, I'm not putting anything past anybody at this point. To me, everything and everybody is on the table, right? We've seen Earl Strickland make that team in years past,
of course.
And so, look, I think a guy like Justin is somebody that they would need, or not that they would need, that they do need on that team, And so, if you were to go on, say that again.
You're basing that on what?
Relative to the competition, Mike. And on top of that, given his history in years, I'm putting a lot of value on what he's done in years past. But the sample size that I'm pulling from currently, I get it. It's not listen, that it's not against the who's who talent going out there and playing ultimate pool events on the 7 foot. I understand that. Now, in terms of that game with Little John, listen, I know he won by whatever it was, 3 or 4 games. That was a tough fucking game, Mike. That was a really, really tough game to play against Little John. And I know Little John's not a world beater, but that spot in 11-6, and that's what makes one pocket so beautiful, is because you can get a shortstop, who can run a few balls. But to be able to have
Mike, you're building a case based on a one pocket match.
Well, hold on, Mike. No, it's
11-6 against Little John.
It's here though, Mike. It's here, and the execution is what I look at, Mike. Because no
one's ever doubted no one's ever degraded Justin Bergman's ability at the table. But ability at the table is different than performing, against these guys all the time, against being in that Moscone Cup stage. And Justin Bergman was, he played on a number of Moscone Cups. Justin Bergman's numbers in Moscone Cup play aren't anything that you can't live without. Okay, so I got a lot more that I need to see out of Justin Bergman before I start having this conversation again.
See, I don't know if a lot more. I don't think. Honestly, Mike, I don't think it would take much. You know, if he shows up to a U.S. Open, look, we saw it one year where he wasn't even a part of that conversation. Showed up to the international, all of a sudden, go get that kid a jersey. Let's go. You know, so that's what I mean in terms of like all bets kind of being off here when it comes to these invitational exhibitions.
Anything could happen, but you know, I need the eye test isn't cutting it right now.
No, man. Look, you didn't. I don't think Pinozo paid the $25 to watch that one pocket match. Here's the thing: when it comes to one pocket, and this is one thing that like I've seen over the years from the best players, like an Alex and like a Dennis, I'll immediately touch on, because with those guys, Mike, the game and the stakes, more importantly, right? Because there's pressure to be playing for that amount of money and to stay mentally engaged throughout, even whether it's 21 games, or I've seen Dennis go and do some ridiculous things where he's playing, race to 5 or 5,000 by the game or whatever. But because the game is so tough, and I know he's a monster, I know you're playing against a lesser opponent, but you still got to play damn near perfect in order to come away with it, because the game is so difficult. And that's where I feel like seeing Justin play in some of these, gambling one pocket matches or whatever. Look, I know it's a small sample size, and I know we have no idea what his 9-ball break is like. We have no idea how he would fare against a Federer today or a Filler today or whatever. But like, I wouldn't be mad at watching that game and seeing what happens, and I'm sure depending on the type of game, they may indulge some kind of, gambling match against some of these top tier guys. But you do got to go and play. You got to go and play 9-ball. And I get that, Mike.
You got to show me you can play. I mean, it's like we had this conversation the last couple of years with Tony Chohan. You're talking about the one pocket guys and who can play and who plays for big money and all that kind of stuff. And nobody thought enough to make it a real serious conversation. So again, I just think that
we only had that conversation just in the competition, though, Mike.
Justin's got to show some commitment to wanting to be on the team. Okay, that's what I don't think I don't need to see him travel to Hanoi. I just want to see him get in some of these regional WNT 9-ball events. I want to see him get into the U.S. Open and the Florida Open. I want to see him at least give an inclination that, yeah, you know what, I'd really love to play in the Moscone Cup again. And so I'm going to roll my dice in a couple of these events and see how I do and see if I look like I got the game or whatever. Then yeah, now I'm interested. But until he makes that commitment and that decision, then no, I'm not interested in discussing it.
Well, you got to imagine that now, given that little boost in his bankroll that he got a couple of days ago, that now you got the money to go. And then listen, now your argument is completely fair, Mike. And like, how bad do you want it, or do you even want it? And if you don't, that's okay, because financially, it is tough action to go out there and compete. And I get that. And from a business standpoint, listen, I ain't gonna be mad at nobody for not traveling like that, because it is so difficult, especially once you leave the States on top of that, But listen, if you got a little bit of boost, and if you're hungry enough, and if you want it, and
get him on the show, Mike. Get him on the show. Let's ask him.
You want to make a call? I'm down. Let's do it. Let's hit him up. Let's see if we can get him on. I had hit up Justin, I think last year, whenever there were rumors of him coming back out, and he said, yeah, give me a little bit of time and I'll do it. Okay. And then I want to say I hit him up again, probably like around, it's the same time of year every year, probably like around November, October, And so, but look, watching, you see him play and you just wonder like what could be. You know what I mean?
Brittany, I've been there, and I agree with you 100%, but I'm done with wondering.
Well, I don't know. Let's get him on the show, and then we'll see where he's at. All right.
I'll tell you what, that show would blow up if you can get him on the show.
Nobody watches the show, Mike. I said nobody watches the show anyway. Look, I love having these discussions because like this is that time of year, right? We're heading into the thick of it already. You know, the
Yeah.
first couple of months, okay, you kind of took it easy a little bit. You got a little PLP. Let's see some rising stars. I get that, and I love the Moritz conversation. You know, but now it's time to make moves, right? Now and now a kid like Jonas, listen, now you got a good foundation, but you got to go and continue because listen, last time we saw Niels on that stage, he didn't look so good. Now I would say, hey, let's give Niels a look, especially given his history in that event.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and there's like there's very few guys that are like that, but there's fair discussions to be had, let alone the young guys who are going to be coming for you. You know, and that's where it makes the conversation really interesting. I think it completely changes the game and the level of competitiveness whenever you bring in like, listen, if Jonas makes Team Europe, you know, that'll change the betting line a little bit, Mike. You know, because a guy like David and Fran, who you would imagine would probably be one of the first two guys
I
out
remember,
on that team. You
having
know,
this same conversation last year with Mickey Krause being on the team.
hey, listen, Mickey
I know
Mickey didn't look that good in the Moscone Cup,
it
Mike.
didn't matter.
Well, but that's more a credit to the Americans. But it mattered against tough competition with the Asian players. You know,
Yeah,
and I would imagine,
I
and
still
I
say,
would imagine
still say that was the best thing that ever happened to the Europeans was going there and getting their ass kicked in the Rays Cup.
I agree with you. I agree with you for sure. You know, but I want to see. Okay, well, now how much? It's easy when you've been steamrolling the competition for the way you've been over the last few years when it comes to the Americans on the European side of it, right? But we already saw what happened whenever you weren't stealing, right? We already saw how the Europeans were playing whenever they were up against really tough competition in the Asian players. So how much pride are they going to take in showing up for next year? You know what I'm saying? Or this year, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
Um, and that's where like it really makes these these spots in the calendar. Who's gonna make a move? You know, who's gonna build off of what they've done? Who's gonna come out in that last leg of the race? You know, and who's got a real opportunity to once everything kind of lines up in said tournament to be able to deliver. You know, and a guy like Robbie showed, hey, listen, I can be part of a conversation when I wasn't anywhere in the conversation prior to, with just one solid tournament.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I love this time of year, Mike. Listen, there's a lot of shit going on in pool everywhere you look.
Is there going to be a
Yeah.
Rays Cup?
I mean, I saw a little comic book post from Matchroom that said it was going to be, a Reyes Cup.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I haven't seen it.
You didn't see?
No.
Oh, come on. What is the deal, Mike? They're going to be out there. They're staying in Manila for 5 years. Is that right?
That was the deal. Yeah.
So home court advantage right off the bat. I like it, man. And I
No,
know that
you got to build the event, and that makes all the sense in the world to me. We talked about that before. I have no issue with that.
Yeah. And I want to see. There's very few fans in pool that show more pride than the Filipinos, in my opinion. Who truly root for their own. Like they really, really root for their guys, and I mean, like just like sport fans do. You know what I'm saying, Mike?
Yeah.
And so I would love to see that place just rumbling, right, and just packed to the gills, and everybody just hammering down and high fiving, and the pressure and the oohs and the ahs and all these things, and then see what some of these guys are made of. But for these young guys looking in, listen, you're going to have to still earn your way on there one way or the other, because your shadow is not big enough on your resume. Sure as hell ain't to this point, and it's only going to get tougher. It's only going to get tougher, and depending on what part of the world you're in, you can make arguments all across the board, Mike. I'm pumped to see how the UK Open is going to shape up starting off this major season.
It's starting to, feels like it's going to start rolling into gear now, which is what we've been waiting, a quarter of the year for, third of the year for. So,
what are some other things that you're looking forward to, Mike, in the next couple of months?
Just more, more consistent activity. It was kind of like feast or famine the 4 months of the year. So I'm just looking for a little more consistency. Really looking for the fall. Looking forward to the fall where you get U.S. Open, Florida Open, You get a lot of this stuff starting to roll in a hurry. International Open later in the year. So there's a lot going on, a lot of opportunities. So let's have
Remember
that.
how remember how much weight we put on the U.S. Open every year, for every team, and so how much value is it going to be for that leg of the season?
We haven't heard yet this year what the process is going to be for automatic spots. What we heard early on was it's not going to be the same as last year, where it was one announcement after this date, after this event, the next automatic is this event, the next automatic. It doesn't sound like it's going to be that again. So we haven't heard.
How do you feel about that, Mike? If it were to shift to all go towards the back end of the year?
I think it makes more sense. I think last year was a little bit choppy. If you won early, you were in that first spot, even if you faded the rest of the year. I think I think they'll probably come up with something better. I'm sure whatever they come up with, I'll probably like a little bit better. Where the 3 automatic spots all come after one event. You're still probably going to know 2 of them anyways, but it keeps everybody in the game longer.
It could really go for some great drama on the back end of an event, because you could have a guy who's sitting, in a 6 through 12 spot, you know what I mean? Where if he's in a quarterfinal, well, now you're thinking, okay, wait a minute, he may be able to take a leap here with 2 more matches, and now number 3 is going to be his ass on the way out. You know what I'm saying? So, from a drama standpoint, it can certainly go and add a ton of value there. Which, I mean, they love it. So I'm not going to be mad at it if it were to change a little bit. I'm sure that from the players' side of it, though, that's got to be really tough action, because now I have no idea. Well, I would have an idea, but it would really put so much on that back end, and of course, including the World Championship, to performing. You know what I mean? And not having any kind of security or much of a cushion, you would say, you know what I mean, without being completely out and free and clear and in a place where you can breathe a little bit.
World Championship still locks up 2 spots. Right?
When is the World Championship, Mike? You heard anything?
Don't start.
Come on, Mike.
Say the words, Mike. Say the words. Say radio silent. Let me hear it.
I'm not. Listen, I'm not.
I don't know what the dates of the World Championship are, but we know what the prize fund is. So yeah, first and second place, whether it's an American, a European, 2 Europeans, 2 Asians, an American, whatever, you're locking up spots with 1 and 2. So that will be kind of like, and this year's U.S. Open is a big, heavy, really tilts in someone's favor now, because you've added a lot more to that.
A lot more, Mike. Doubling up on that event, which is great.
Right? So yeah, I mean, you put a dent in something there.
It really puts that bullseye on an event like that. But that's where, like, all of these.
I love those events. It might be a little bit top heavy with the World Championship, because that's like so out of whack with everything else. But I like having these events where it's like, okay, this is the Masters. This is what you got to win.
Well, it keeps, for better or worse, it's going to keep the eye on that prize. You know what I mean? And listen, you can have a full season and do things to kind of like build the bankroll and all these things, but like, don't make no mistake about it. You better do whatever you got to do to be ready for that event. And if you're even close in contention, now you got a little bit of an opportunity there with the U.S. Open, like relative to the other majors. You know what I'm saying? So listen, making 20, 30 or 40,000 is one thing. When you're making 100,250,000, it's a whole different thing, you know? And so, not just in terms of how it's going to change, the way you're living day to day, but if those goals are to make said teams, well, now there's a pretty good way to get on there, with one solid week of performing, but everything better be hitting its gear,
Yeah, the planets all have to align to win those events.
We'll have more coverage of the UK Open coming up in the next few days. I'm gonna be trying to do my usual like day-to-day stuff with them as well. So trying to get players each and every day when the event starts. I think it starts, when is it, Mike? Tuesday, Monday, something like that?
6th.
the 6th, so 4 more days. And you're just going to have more. And if the Scottish Open is that stacked, I'm excited to see how that UK Open's going to shape up. Like I know it's a little, look, these superstars of the world, and the social media stars of the world coming out there kind of waters it down just a little bit for me. But when it comes to like what these true grit players are looking for, well, here's your first big
Yep.
spot.
Yep.
And so from that aspect, I'm really excited about it. Like I said, you guys can check out all the action at WNT.TV. $10 a month or $100 for the year if you're not nitty like Uncle Panozzo. Mike, are you going to be around for any UK Open coverage next week?
Later in the week.
When the tournament thickens up, that's when we bring in the heavyweights.
That's when we bring in the heavyweights. Speaking of heavyweights, are you going to Buffalo's?
No, we got an event out in California, so I'm going to be out there. So
$500,000 Calcutta and Feder and Filler and SVD.
Look, I love me some One Pocket, Mike, and that event is going to have the who's. It's the equivalent of a One Pocket World Championship. Like, make no mistake about it.
I just want to see people walking in and out of there with suitcases full of cash.
Just like having a boombox on your arm, but it just be like a brick. You know what I mean? That's what I want to see. No, it's going to be history, and we're going to do more stuff when it comes to Buffaloes and kind of previewing and going through the players list and some dark horses. And there are some dark horses, without getting too far ahead of it, like a Mickey Krause who, could make a run as he's learned the game a little bit. I think it'll be like you'll have the Europeans and Americans going to go in there and get away with the money. I'll put it like that. And I'm not saying like the usual one pocket players. I'm talking about like the non one pocket players are going to come away with the money, in my opinion.
Someone who just shoots really straight for a week.
And some guy who likes fishing, Mike, may end up being there in a semifinal. So anyhow, we'll have more stuff on Buffaloes. We'll have more stuff on the UK Open. I'm going to go watch some snooker, Mike. I appreciate you for stopping by. Enjoy the trip to Vegas, and hurry up and get your ass back so we can talk some UK Open stuff.
Will do.
All right. We'll see you guys later.